wanted to go over today the things that I feel are necessary in order to have a good herbal medicine cabinet. The last video I did, which I'll link below if you missed it, is the herbs that I feel that you need in order to have a good medicine cabinet, and then also kind of the containers and stuff, but not really what you're going to do with it. So this video, I kind of wanted to break it up into what equipment you're going to need depending on what you want to do with the herbs, whether it's a tea, a tincture, a glycerite, a salve, that kind of stuff. I wanted to show you that today, what equipment that I use. And then I also wanted to show you how I make salves from the oils that I do. And so I'm gonna bring you along with that because I'm actually out of the boo-boo salve. Yes, I love that name. But I'm actually out of the boo-boo salve that I make for my family and that I also sell in my shop. Because let's face it, I have a lot of kids and they hit boo-boos. So I need to make more today, and I'm going to bring you along with that. So you can go ahead and skip to that if you want. I'm going to try and chapter these out just to make it easier for you. Just kind of look below and see if I've done that yet. It may take me a day or two once this is posted, just to be honest. But I will get to it. Let's go. So first, let's talk about what herbal medicine is. It is when you're using herbs, plants, whether it be the leaf, the flower, the root, whatever is actually usable of that particular plant. It's when you're using it for medicinal purposes or for medicine, whether that be, like I said, in a salve for cuts, scrapes, burns, anything like that. Or, you know, you can even turn them into essential oils at home. I tend to use an array of herbs and in different forms. I make tinctures, I make glycerites for the kids because, let's face it, they usually don't like the taste of alcohol. I don't either. So herbal medicine is using herbs and plants and their parts for medicinal purposes. Sourcing your herbs is probably the utmost important. You want to make sure that you're getting a good brand, which I'm in the process of, is growing my own in the backyard, in the front yard, in a container, on a windowsill, wherever you can grow them. Growing your own is going to be absolute best. For something like cinnamon that you can't necessarily grow unless you're in like Sri Lanka or something, then sourcing is going to be your best bet for that for sure. And then for what I'm going to go over today, having the best tools is going to be your next most important thing, which you can start very, very basic, which I'll go over shortly, and then you can get high tech, which I'm probably in the middle. Let's start with tinctures. What do you need to make tinctures? First and foremost, you're going to need a jar. You can use mason jars. You can use even these little weck jars of different sizes. You can use the old jars that you've saved. So this is one of my cabinets. I've shown this multiple times in my videos. I have a lot of my herbs stored in glass jars that I use on a very regular basis. I still have some in its plastics. Because let's face it, jars are expensive and I have a lot of herbs. So do it the best that you can. Don't feel that you need to go out and spend a bunch of money. Focus on sourcing your herbs, making your own herbs, whether you go out and buy organic ginger, chop it up and dry it up yourself, that's totally possible. Or if you buy it like this. Busy mom, I'm gonna do this. But having a bunch of mason jars in various sizes is my favorite way of doing it, just because I can already. So I have a lot of these lying around. You can save old glass jars. See? This is not honey anymore. You don't have to go out and buy anything. You can start saving these. You can use spaghetti jars, jelly jars, whatever you have. Just keep them. Wash them out really, really well. So using this is, what is this? This is a pint mason jar, wide mouth, because pouring it out makes it so much easier. Because when it's wet and sticky, whether you're using glycerin or alcohol, for tincture purposes, it'd be alcohol. But it just makes it so much easier using this. This is my favorite. So for tinctures, the other thing that you're definitely going to need is going to be an alcohol 80 proof. I don't actually have any with me right now. I have to go to the store this weekend and buy some more. I usually buy the Kirkland vodka at Costco, that big jar, and it lasts me for quite a while. And then you're gonna need little amber bottles once you are done to store this in, generally, because generally you're gonna want it to be in a dropper. So what you're gonna need for herbs, besides the mason jars for anything really, is a scale, a little kitchen scale. This one is super old. It's actually missing one of its things, so it rocks, but it works very well. I use this for my sourdough too. A good kitchen scale is what you're gonna need. Something else that you may need, you don't necessarily need this, and I'll explain why, but a mortar and pestle. This is great for grinding up your herbs. The reason that I say you may or may not actually need a mortar and pestle is depending on how you are getting your herbs. If you are sourcing them, then you can just buy it in the form that you need. And if you're buying a root herb, I highly recommend that you actually get the powdered form if that's what you're needing. It is very difficult to grind a root herb that's been dried into a powder at home. And using a mortar and pestle is not going to do the trick. I've tried. But if you are growing like dandelions, let's take that for example, you can utilize the root. If you are using it from your yard, you're going to need something like a coffee grinder or the mortar and pestle to get that root down into a powder. Or you could be doing it with the leaves. Once the leaves are dry, you can grind it down with mortar and pestle. That's what I've done. So this is a double boiler. This is what I will show you later on when I'm making the boo-boo salve at the end of this video. I did actually just order a double boiler, which I can show later on. But this just sets right in the pot, and the water from underneath warms this up, and you can put your oils and your beeswax or anything that you're using into this to melt, and it helps preserve the integrity of your herbs. So for any herb that you're creating at home, herbal oil herb, or a tincture, a glycerite, even tea of some sort, you're going to need a strainer. And the best kind, you can use cheesecloth, you can use nut bags. I generally use a mesh strainer. I have mesh strainers in varying sizes. So you've seen me use this in creating my elderberry syrup. It's nice and large, it's a mesh strainer. It has some really good, close mesh. Generally, because tinctures, herbal oils, and stuff like that aren't as big as my syrups, I have different sized mesh strainers here. You can always put a piece of cheesecloth on top of this if you're really wanting to strain out that extra. I tend to just strain twice, like my elderberry syrup. I'll use the big one first, and then I will strain this when I'm going to pour it into the jar. If you're using just a little bit for a tincture, I like the little one. It makes it simple. You can even use like the nut bag and hold it from here, and it'll hang off and drip everything into your container. That's a really simple way, and it just takes some time. You just, set it up, walk away. There are little presses that you can buy. Like I said, that's high tech to me. A little expensive. They have presses. So something else that I use both for personal use and then commercially, since I do sell products on my website, is glass measuring cups. It just helps me know how much I actually have of the tincture, the glycerite, the oil, or the syrup, especially when I'm going to be pouring it into other jars. I know about how much like honey for my syrups or something I'm going to be adding into this. It helps me with the ratio. It helps me with dosing. So this is a big one. This one is my 8-cupper. This is my 4-cupper. This is what I usually use for syrups. And I usually use this for the oils and the tinctures. Obviously, some other things that you're probably going to need are going to be some other sort of measuring tool, whether it be measuring cups, the quarter cup, the third cup, stuff like that. You can use those as well. One thing that has been very helpful for me is funnels. I have these in lots of different sizes. I use them lots of different ways, but having good quality stainless steel funnels helps, especially when you're putting your tinctures into a little dropper, or the glycerites. This will work for the glycerites. If you're wanting to do teas, decoctions, things like that, you're going to need a tea kettle, essentially. Like this one right here. You'll need something like this that has a loose leaf strainer. I love this, it has a little lid. I use this for the kids because I can get several cups out of it. I also have this one. It's from Tiavana. I've had it for quite a while. It's kind of like a French press, except it comes out the bottom. I'm sure if I push on this, I'll probably get some water that's hasn't dried. Nope. Cool. Because the strainer's at the bottom, and so it just pushes. So something like this, just for loose leaf. If you're doing decoctions, you're gonna need a pot. Stainless steel. When you are making salves, some of the things that are gonna be a must-have are gonna be little tins. You're gonna want like little tins, or you're gonna want little glass 4-ounce glass jars, usually mason jars or something. Put your salve in. I have my little 1-ounce, 2-ounce tins here. These are some of the things that I make and sell. This is like an injury salve, and then like the chest congestion salve, and then you can just take it out and use it. Good beeswax, and I'll show you how I use this later. And then a container for it, obviously. I prefer to keep this definitely in a glass container. Label it, even though you can kind of tell what it looks like. Always label. You need labels. The way that I started out was I actually had issues that I wanted to treat with herbal medicine at home. So I sought that out rather than seeking out herbs and figuring out how they worked into my life. I started researching what I needed, especially with, for an example, pregnancy. What is the most nourishing herbs to help support me during pregnancy, during postpartum, during breastfeeding, stuff like that. You can take a course. You can just dive right in and learn all the things. I highly recommend you do that at some point, but if you want to dip your toe in, think of something that you're personally wanting to do. Do you want to make a salve so you can have something to put on wounds, or chest congestion? If that's what you're wanting, you can look into those. Just try and remember that there are side effects for a lot of herbs out there. You may be taking medications that may counteract with the herb. So for example, St. John's wort, that's a really popular herb, but when you're taking something from a pharmacy like an SSRI, those are not compatible. If you're taking, my favorite thing, cinnamon, if you're taking cinnamon, you should not, medicinally, outside of culinary, so if you're taking it medicinally, which means in higher doses, then you're probably not going to also want to be on something like a blood thinner, or maybe not even necessarily aspirin, but something like Coumadin, things like that if you're at risk for stroke that you may be taking, without monitoring your levels. That's something, if you're wanting to switch over, that you would need to be working very closely with somebody. You always want to take precaution, make sure you're doing your due diligence, and because I can tell you something that works for me, but it may not work for you based on your health history, family history, and what you are doing with it. Books are your best friend. Internet is your best friend. I have a blog I will link below that goes over a lot of this. Just because it's herbs, because it's natural, doesn't mean that there are no side effects. Herbs can be very, very potent, and they can be misused. They can be used incorrectly and cause harm, just not as prevalent as medication. Make sure that you have that understanding, that you are using something that does have strong properties. It does have organic chemistry behind it. You want to make sure that you're using it safely. When you are starting out, start small. Like I had said, start by researching what problem you're wanting to use herbs with, whether it be just for nourishment, or maybe you have high blood pressure, or your kids are always hurting themselves and you want to make a salve for them, so you're not using something that has an antibiotic cream and all the issues that come along with that. If you go to my website, pioneerhealthhomestead.com, I do have a section for best herbs for things like, I have the liver coming up. I'm not sure if it's posted yet. I have lymphatic, endocrine, postpartum, breastfeed, anxiety while you're breastfeeding, just a whole bunch of different things on there. 20 different herbs to have in your medicine cabinet or to have growing in your garden when possible. Different things like that. So go ahead and check out my blog. Again, it's pioneerhealthhomestead.com, same thing as the YouTube channel. I'll also put a link down below where I like to source my herbs. So just start small, Pick something that you want to start with, whether it be tincture, glycerite, a salve, a syrup, a tea, anything like that. Just pick one of those, get the ingredients, get the equipment for that, master that in different recipes, different ways, different forms, and then move on to the next thing, because it can feel a little overwhelming. Tea and tinctures are probably your easiest ones to start with, but let me show you how I make my boo-boo salve, and it's probably going to be a voiceover because my kids are at the door wanting back in the house, even on this nice sunny day. I decided to take a quick break before doing my salve to go outside and see this gorgeous sunny day and looking at the signs of spring all around me. That first one was a blueberry plant, and then my blackberries, excuse me. And then if you know what this is, let me know in the comments. And here I am going to strain out the lavender oil that I have been infusing for several months. And it is just so fragrant, and it smells so good. I wish that I had smell-o-vision for you guys with this. You definitely need to make lavender oil at the very least. It is just wonderful. And then make sure you compost the herbs. You will notice that beeswax does like to stick together. So you're going to measure out 1 ounce of beeswax to 1 cup of the oil. Since I'm only going to be using 1 cup of oil, I'm only measuring out 1 ounce. Of course, when you make your own salve, you can add more or less to make the texture that you like best. So measuring out your oil is going to be based off of your preference and your recipe. I'm using quarter cups here to measure out each individual oil that I use in my recipe, and I'm just adding it to the pre-measured beeswax. It just is much simpler that way. And now we just wait for everything to warm up, and we can stir it as it goes to help it melt faster. So you can see the bottom is touching the water. That's going to warm up the double boiler. And that's what's going to melt the beeswax into the oil. And then it has little spouts on the side, which is lovely because I can just pour it into containers, which I need to go get. So I'm going to do my 4 ounce. I always put my lids upside down. Something you learn in microbiology and kind of common sense is you don't want to contaminate. So you always place it upside down. You don't touch the rims. You don't do anything like that. So I got my 4 ounce for me and my family. I'll do a couple 1 ounces and 1 or 2 of the 2 ounces. I did about a cup of oil for 1 ounce of beeswax, which usually makes, because of volume, it's going to make a little bit more than 1 cup, which theoretically should make 8 ounces per cup. This is obviously more than that. This is 10 ounces. You have 4, 6, 8, and 10. You can see it's dissolving. It's almost ready. A little bit of flakes left. You don't necessarily have to worry about it cooling too quickly because it is in a stainless steel metal thing. Feel this if you can. So mine is okay to grab. So you want to take your oil, and because when you pour it, you're pouring it generally from your double boiler, you don't want to get water coming in. Water can make it go rancid. I always just dry off the bottom with it. And sediment is normal. It's always normal when you're doing herbals. Cheesecloth would probably be the only way to really not get so much. So mine has most of the sediment, which is fine. I don't mind it. And then these can either keep for later, sell. That is just left. This we have escaped lavender oil over here. So I'm just going to wait for this to completely dry before putting the lids on. At this point is when you would add any kind of essential oils that you would want to use. For my chest congestion salve, I would be putting in essential oils right about now. Or you could even put it in when it's still in here, either or preference. This would be much more controlled dosing as opposed to here, but you can do the math. I prefer this. And make sure you are labeling not just the oils that you've made, but also your salves once they are dry and you put the lids on. You will not remember. I have said, oh, I'm going to remember this many times over, and I have not. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a like, a subscribe, and share this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.